I'm William Hogan, and I'm the Raymond Planck Professor of Global Energy Policy at the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. I am also the Research Director for the Harvard Electricity Policy Group, and I've been working for many years on energy policy generally, and most recently since the early 90s on the problems of designing efficient, competitive electricity markets. In discussing these matters, it's important to understand the market in which these activities took place. This is an electricity market in the Mid-Atlantic states, the so-called PJM market. In that market, when there are transactions and trades, there's collection for many things. One of the payments that gets made is for losses. The total payment for losses is based on the marginal losses of the last transaction. This actually over-collects for the total loss requirements, and so PJM and others have adopted procedures for rebating some of the funding that comes from the losses. The policy for these rebates was discussed by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. They debated the merits of how to distribute these funds, these rebates. I'm not going to speak to the merits of the particular policy because I think the one they adopted actually wasn't a good policy, but nonetheless they understood it. They understood that if they rebated the funds in a particular way, it would create incentives for traders to conduct trades in part to capture these payments under these marginal losses, and they made an affirmative decision to go forward and implement this policy. Powhatan, who had hired Dr. Chen to conduct trading for them, had been involved in these markets, and because of the decision that the federal regulators made, Powhatan and Dr. Chen were due a rebate for prior transactions that had actually taken place. My understanding, this was a surprise to them because they didn't know that this was coming, but it did alert them to the fact that these rebates would be continuing going forward if they continued with similar kinds of transactions. On behalf of Powhatan and working on these matters, Dr. Chen, or Mr. Chen, actually devised a trading strategy that was in part motivated by receiving these loss payments and started conducting those transactions. After some period of time, it was noticed, the market monitor, I understand, noticed that not only had the policy been implemented and it was having its anticipated effect of providing incentives for traders to do these transactions, contacted Dr. Chen and told him to stop with the transactions, which he did. And then subsequently, there was an action initiated by the FERC Enforcement Office to treat this as a case of market manipulation. I would say it should not be considered as manipulation, because of the fact that it was anticipated by the federal regulators. It was a policy which they consciously adopted. It was a policy they knew would have these incentives, and the trades were done in a way which was transparent, that that's what they were doing, and they were capturing these incentives. I happen to think that the market could have been designed better. I would have had a different policy, but but that's true for many features of the market, and I would not consider this to be manipulation. FERC should be aggressive in dealing with market manipulation cases. That's its job, and we all want that on behalf because we want to have a well-functioning market. But in applying an aggressive policy, they should work within a framework that is consistent with the well-functioning market that we want to achieve. I think that in this case and other cases recently, that connection between aggressive enforcement and supporting well-functioning markets is either breaking or been broken. So, and I think this case is an example of that problem.